Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome back to the Joy of Coding here at Portland State University. We are now at session 10. So this week we are talking about Project 4, the REST API. And so then we got an introduction to the project on Monday. We created the new Maven project for it, so this is a brand new code base. And we walked through that. We talked about what servlets are. We talked about the distributed nature of this project, the fact that you've got two programs that are talking to each other, or two processes that are talking to each other. You've got the Jetty server, the web container that is running the REST API, that is responding to those HTTP URLs. And then you've got a client, a command line program or a web browser or whatever that is then making requests of those URLs that are served up by the by Jetty, by the web container. And so we're going to explore more of that tonight. We're going to focus more on the client side and talk about how the client works. And then we're going to probably do that for the first half of class. And the second half of class will be dedicated to refactoring the REST API, that dictionary program that came out of the box with the REST API into something that looks a little bit more like a phone bill, so that you can see how the code morphs. Will be an opportunity to use some of the refactoring tools in IntelliJ. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see what we can get done. But first, I wanted to open up the floor for Prime Minister's questions. So Project 2 was due this week. Fielded a lot of good questions on Slack about that. And I'm curious to hear about your experiences. So, but first off, any questions remaining about Project 2? Was there anything that maybe you were left wondering with, or anything you want to talk about with regards to questions about Project 2? What did you all think? How did Project 2 compare to Project 1? Like, what was easier, what was more difficult, what was the same, what was different? Um, what, uh, what learnings and insights did you get from Project 2? Oh, the integration tests were a lot more involved. I can believe that's true. Sarah, would you mind coming off mute and maybe saying a little bit more about what your experience was like with the integration tests?
Yeah, it was just a lot more complicated making temporary directories, saving files to the temporary directory, and then like parsing that back to make sure it followed the command line correctly.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't know if you used it or not, but in JUnit 5, there is an at temp dir annotation that you can put on a variable to your test method, and that will inject or actually give the test method a capital F file object, which represents the a temp directory for that test. I don't know if I don't think I have an example of that in like the out of the box code. Maybe I should. But anyway, uh, I really like that feature of JUnit 5 because that way I don't need to worry about cleaning up my test directories afterwards because the test framework takes care of it for you. Oh, good, I do have an example. Sweet, awesome, good deal. Thanks for sharing that. Well, anybody else have some observations about Project 2 that they would like to share?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, let's see here. Nice to be able to build off of and refactor Project 1. Nice to have the Project 1 grade. Uh, Results to build integration tests for. Yep. Uh, oh, okay, yeah, and it looks like, they were saying that, because you had the integration tests from Project 1, that made you do a little bit more TDD. Good. That was the intent. So, yeah, I hope those of you who took the test cases from Project 1 and implemented as integration tests, I hope that helped you go a little faster in Project 2, or at least give you the confidence that what you had added in Project 2 hadn't broken the Project 1 functionality. I will say that for Project 3, because the format of the date changes on the command line, you might have to go back and make some changes to the integration tests. Actually, you will have to go back and make changes to the integration tests because the dates are now in 12-hour time instead of 24-hour time. I hope that's okay, and just be a little extra stuff. Actually, that might be one of the first things you want to implement in your project 3 is changing the command line parsing of dates to use 3 arguments instead of 2. Yeah, cool. Oh yeah. Someone else also pointed out that if there were problems in project 1, yeah, they were revisited you again on project 2, and that's the whole idea, and that's part of the lesson, right? I don't want you to all have to start over from scratch at the if for every project. In fact, part of what I hope that you get to experience is taking code and evolving it, so you have code that lives throughout the entire course, and you get to use it in different circumstances. And sometimes what's there from the previous project is totally fine for the next one. So for instance, you may or may not have had to change your phone call class, for instance. But in project 3, you'll definitely have to change both the phone bill and the phone call, along with the adding the printing printer. But you shouldn't have to change your. Maybe you will have to change your text dumper and text parser. Yeah, maybe you will because of the changes to the date. Anyway, all part of the lesson, all part of what I hope you get to experience with the projects. Nice. Speaking of project 3, I know many people just finished their project 2, but are there any questions about project 3 that I can answer for you tonight? Hopefully you've got good momentum after project 2, and so then project 3 feels a little bit more familiar. You've been doing lots of Java coding in the class, and so hopefully the language, the syntax, how you declare objects and stuff is becoming more familiar to you. Anything else any other questions, any other that I can answer for you, any feedback that you'd like to share? Okay then, let's dive back into project 4. So as a reminder, project 4, I just like this little architectural diagram, I show it a lot. So here we've got 2 programs that talk to each other. We've got a Jetty web container that hosts this phone bill web application. Inside it is this phone bill servlet. And ultimately, it's this phone bill servlet that responds to URLs like /phone/bill/calls. And that's what is the back end of your application. That's the thing that provides information and operates on your phone bill. And then there is a client of this phone bill, which is driven by a project 4 main class. So to run these things, I'm going to try to mirror the diagram here. So on the right, I'm going to have the Jetty running. And so the way I do that is I say Maven W in this phone bill web project. I say Jetty, so the Jetty plug into Maven, and the goal will be run. And what this will do is that it will build the source code, and it will assemble a web archive, a WAR file, which contains the web application, deploy that web application to a Jetty, which then Jetty web container, which then listens on port 8080 for HTTP requests. And it looks like, yep, it's doing it all there. It's running here on localhost 8080. And then over here, I'm going to run the main method, which is going to be in the phone bill target, phone bill client.jar. Yep, here is the main method. I wonder why it's printing out twice. Anyway, it takes 4 command line arguments: the host, which is localhost, the port 8080, and then what's implemented right now is this very simple dictionary application, where you can do things like add words and their meanings, their definitions, to the database, the servlet. And now when I query it, I now see the dictionary contains one word. So I can interact with the web application through this command line tool, but then I can also interact with it through a web browser. Right? A web browser is basically a user interface, a visual tool that makes calls to, that communicates over HTTP among other protocols with some remote machine and some remote server, and then and then displays the output. So as we saw last time, there is this index.html file that has HTML forms. So if you're a HTML form person and if it makes sense for you to use it, go ahead and use it. But just to be clear, this is not part of the assignment. You don't need to modify it if you don't want to. But here's where we can get definitions of words, like dough, and we can do things like add new ones, sun. And then when we go back in the browser, we can then list all the entries, and we've got 2 of them. And then let's see here. Then the other thing that we saw is that all of this data is stored in memory. So if I Control-C my Jetty to stop it, and then I restart it, we'll see that all the data is lost, which is fine for this project. Or in the real world, you want to persist it off to something that's going to outlive the execution of your web service, but you get the drift. You've already demonstrated that you can, so no calls in the phone bill right now. So I go back and I can add a new one, and then I call myself. Oh, required parameter word is missing. Ah, that's interesting. Oh, because it didn't have it there. Wrong me. Nice. And I call myself. And now if I go and just reload this URL to see all the calls, there it is. So that's what this application does out of the box, right? It gives you a servlet that implements this dictionary application. It gives you a command line program that interacts with it, and it's the command line program that I'm going to use to test your code. And you can go back and look at the assignment. There's, in addition to just creating phone calls and a phone bill, there's the ability to search. And the other thing that's an important thing to know is that the protocol that is spoken between the client and the server is the text format of the phone bill, and then the client pretty prints it. So as you see, the raw text version uses a colon, and the pretty version, uses an arrow. Check that out. Anyway, that's the difference. And there might be some indentation here. I don't know. So last time we looked at the code for the servlet, and we saw how. Oops, there it is. Oh, no, go back. Then we saw there was the do-get method and the do-post methods, which are invoked based on which HTTP verb is used to make the request. And so a get will return information about a phone bill, and a post will put information into a phone bill. We'll create a new phone call in the phone bill, or in this case, a dictionary. We also saw how you could write unit tests for your servlet by using the Mockito API to create these mock objects. Because HTTP servlet request, well, this is an object that is passed to do get, but your code doesn't create this. That object is actually created by Jetty, in which your program runs, and so it's Jetty that provides an implementation of that. But in order to test this code, you can use a mock implementation of this, and you can configure it to behave the way you want. Like, for instance, return a specific print writer object when getWriter is invoked. And the code under test, your do-get method or your do-post method, is none the wiser. It doesn't know and it doesn't care that it's being invoked with mock objects versus other implementations of the GET servlet request interface that are provided by Jetty. So that's where we focused last time. And before we move on, are people left with any questions about the sort of the right side of the diagram? What's going on there in the Jetty web container? Oh, I guess there was a question that came in beforehand. They asked, do we have access to the Maven command you use to calculate our project grades? Well, actually, calculate your project grades. I mean, you don't have access to the scripts that have the test cases, and there's really no magic to calculating the grades. The grader just does the math, however they do the math. So I'm not sure exactly what the question is. If you want to follow up, I'm happy to discuss it in like a Slack IM or something, to make sure that I understand the question. But in general, you've been given access to everything you're going to get access to. There's really, yeah, I can't think of anything else that where you can go and look to figure out more about your projects. Okay. So that's the right-hand side of the diagram. Let's next look at what's on the left side. So there are two classes of interest that comprise the command line program. There's Project 4 and there's Phone Bill REST Client. Now, Project 4 isn't terribly interesting. Oops. Project 4 is just your main method. And so it parses the command line. And so it does things like it goes and finds the host, the port, the word, and the definition. It has the logic to say, oh, look, if the word is null, then print all the dictionary pairs. If word is not null but definition is, then just get the dictionary entries. Actually, this should be print the definition of the word. And then if both of them are specified, then it will create the word definition pair in the dictionary. So this class isn't, as far as what it does, isn't terribly interesting. But the Phone Bill REST client is. So ultimately, what your client, what the program needs to do, the command line program needs to do, is make HTTP requests of the server. And if you go back and watch the foundations of the web lecture, you'll learn a little bit about HTTP, HTTP protocol, and sort of how the communication takes place, and how everything's text-based. And you'll learn about the verbs like get and post and put and delete that are used with HTTP, and you'll learn about URLs. And so the job of the client is ultimately to craft an HTTP request for doing something like creating a phone call in a phone bill. And so it needs to put together the proper URL and the proper payload to then send to the web container, send to Jetty on whatever host and port it's communicating with to go off and do that work. And then Jetty will return a response, and then the command line program needs to process that response and needs to handle it appropriately, especially if it's an error. So, as you can imagine, there is quite a bit of logic logic and coding involved with all of that to properly format the URL, to make sure that the payloads are encoded properly, et cetera, et cetera. And in terms of design, I thought it would be cleaner to separate all of that, again, forming the HTTP request, separate that away from the command line parsing. So out of the box, you get this phone bill REST client class, which provides a nice Java interface on top of all of the code that ultimately calls the REST API, ultimately makes the HTTP request. This can be a little confusing at first because it does abstract everything, right? But for me, I think it's an example of good design where you separate responsibilities. So have Project 4 be good at parsing the command line, and have Phone Bill REST Client be good at making HTTP requests. And where the two meet in the middle is the interface provided by Phone Bill REST Client, which works with the domain. So in this case, let's just take a look at what the main method does with the phone bill REST client. It creates a new phone bill REST client for a given host and a given port, right? So it says, oh great, I'm going to make calls to the REST API that is running on this host and this port. And now it does its logic. And so when it says, hey, listen, I want to print all the dictionary pairs, it invokes a method on a client. It says, okay, great, give me all the dictionary entries. And this thing returns an object of type map of string to string, which is the way I represent a dictionary, right? It's got words and definitions is just a map of strings. And now what it does is it creates a pretty printer, creates a pretty printer for the dictionary, and it's going to print out to a string writer, and so it's going to dump the dictionary to the pretty printer. And then it's going to get the string value of that string writer that it was ultimately dumped to, and that's what it'll print out. So this message is simply whatever is printed out to standard out. So, the important thing to note here is that this code right here doesn't know anything about HTTP requests, right? All of that complexity is hidden inside, encapsulated, right? It's there, hidden from this client inside the phone bill REST client class, which is nice, right? Because again, separation of responsibilities and knowledge. The Project 4 main class just wants to do command line stuff. Doesn't want to deal with the complexities of making HTTP calls. And if something goes wrong, you get like an IO exception or a parser exception, right? There's nothing exposed in that interface about URLs necessarily. So similarly, when you want to get the definition of a word, it calls the get definition method on the HTTP client. And then finally, when it wants to add a dictionary entry, again, it uses a fluent Java API. Say, hey, listen, client, go add a dictionary entry for this word in this definition. And it handles things accordingly. So again, what the phone bill REST client does is it provides a nice interface. And by nice, I mean it makes sense. It has the right level of abstraction, right? So it deals with things like strings and returns a map of strings. And when you're dealing with a dictionary, those are the domain objects of the dictionary. Later on in class, we're going to start refactoring this code to start using phone bills and phone calls. But in the meantime, we're going to deal with strings. So that's what the main method does with the phone bill REST client. What do you think about that? And is there anything that you're left wondering about what the phone bill REST client does before we talk about how it does it? Okay, let's dive into the implementation of the phone bill REST client. Okay, so again, this is a simple helper, not simple. It is a helper class that provides a fluent interface on top of all the code that deals with the URLs. So it's got a couple of things. It has a couple of constants, like the name of the web app and the name of the servlet. You don't need to change this stuff. This is all about constructing the URL that ultimately will call. And it also uses this class called HTTP request helper. So this is a class that I wrote. This is off in like my code base. Yeah, it's in the CSJoy web class or package. And this is some code that I wrote on top of Java's lower level APIs for working with URLs. I think originally when I taught this project, that was part of the assignment, and that stuff's kind of finicky and said it's low level, and people kind of struggled with it. So I said, okay, I will again add an abstraction layer on top of that, which hopefully provides an API which is easier to use. So let's see here. Ultimately, then when we create one of these phone bill REST clients and we give it a host name and a port, what it does is it actually calls this other constructor, which simply assigns the HTTP request helper, and creates a new instance of HTTP request helper from the string, well, HTTP, and then the host name, the port, the name of the web app, and the name of the servlet. So the whole idea here is that all the client needs, all the code that calls this, that uses this class needs to do is provide the host name and the port. And then as far as implementation, we leverage this HTTP request helper to actually make the get and the put requests of the REST API. So you've got that. So now that you've got your HTTP request helper all set up to make calls of the REST API, let's see how that's used. So HTTP request helper has methods like get, and get takes a map of key value pairs, which essentially ends up forming the, let's just look at, let's go back here. And so then when I want to get the definition of a word, like me, it sends a URL to it does an HTTP get with a query of word equals me. And so these query values, like word equals me, is what you put into the map that is sent to the get method. So when I want to get all the dictionary entries, well, what I want to do is I want to make a request with no key value pairs. It's the same here, so that's kind of a bad example. So let's put in something else here. Let's put in dear. Nice. So now when I get all of the phone calls, I see 2 of them. But then when I get just me, I get a name I call myself. So you see how the URL changes? That's the whole idea behind REST, right? You give it different URLs and different data comes back. I'm basically querying for a word that is me. And what this Java code does, what this HTTP request helper does, is it gives you a get method where you can specify a map of those key value pairs. So, I mean, like, for instance, here in the get definition method, you give it a word, and what does it do? Well, it makes the HTTP request, it does the get method, and it sends it a map of the word parameter, which is word, and then that word variable that's passed in, parameter that's passed in which case it would be me. So what this call does right here is that it crafts a URL that looks just like this, localhost 8080 phone bill / calls question mark word equals me, and it sends it off to the server, right? And then the servlet receives that and it does its thing. But here I am in the client side code. Again, in the diagram, we're right here. We're looking at the phone bill REST client, and this is the thing that makes the HTTP request. So I go ahead and I call get. Now this returns an object of type response, and then response can do response knows what represents the HTTP response. So this is the thing that is sent back to the client from the servlet. So if we go and look at the servlet, I'm going to put this over here on the right now. Move to opposite group. So recall that the doGet method calls something like write definition. What write definition does is it uses the HTTP servlet response and it writes some stuff to it, right? It sets a status. It maybe gets the print writer and writes some information to it. Basically does a text dumper. to write the information to it. And that is the payload that is sent back. And it's sent back to the get method. And then the get method here on the HTTP request helper object will turn that into a response. And a response gives you information such as like what was the HTTP status code and how many lines were there in the content, all this kind of good stuff. So this is my class that I wrote, and it handles all of the, getting the input stream and reading from it and all that kind of good stuff, so that you don't have to. So once you call the get method and you get the response, the first thing that the phone bill REST client does is to make sure that the HTTP code that was returned, the status code that was returned in the response, is 200. Is HTTP okay? And if it's not, it's going to throw a REST exception. So here we are on the client side, and we're doing Java programming on the client side. And what should you do if something goes wrong while you are invoking a Java method? You should throw an exception. And that's exactly what happens here. So when the server returns like a 404 error or something like that, this client code will throw an exception, and then it's the responsibility of the main method or whatever is calling the phone bill REST client code to handle that exception accordingly. So again, the idea here is that we're providing a fluent Java API, including exceptions, over the invocation of the REST API over HTTP. Okay, so if there wasn't an exception, then we'll keep going. We'll get the content, which is just the string that was returned by the REST API. And because what was written from the REST API is the text dumper, we'll just use the text parser to parse that string. And so the text parser takes any reader, and so we'll pass a string reader over that string of content, and the text parser parses its thing into, well, I guess when you call the parse method, the box returns a map of strings, and then we will just call the get method on that map to get the definition of that word. So here we're using this combination of the HTTP request helper to go make the HTTP call, and then we're getting the payload that was returned, which will be a text formatted dictionary. We're using the text parser to parse the dictionary text that was returned. And then we're just working with the object returned by the dictionary. Actually, I could just say, I could just call this a dictionary. Maybe that would be a little easier to understand. And then we just return the definition that resides in that dictionary. I'm hoping you can see where the analogs between this out-of-the-box code, the dictionary, and then what your phone bill application will ultimately need to do, both on the server side, but especially now the client side. And so that's how you implement get definition, right? So here, the phone bill REST client provides this, easy to understand, fluent get definition method, and the implementation of it though gets a little wonky because you're calling the REST API and handling the response from the REST API accordingly. Conversely, there is an add dictionary entry method that takes a word and a definition, and this does the HTTP post. Right, the HTTP post is what the if we go back to the index.html here, the HTTP post form is the create. So what this does is it passes in two pieces of information, the word and the definition, and passes that to the servlet with an HTTP post verb, which ultimately gets delivered to the do post method. And it's got all this logic here that we looked at on Monday to make sure that the word parameter is provided, make sure the definition parameter is provided, and then it does the application logic, which is to simply put the word and the definition inside a dictionary on the server side, and then return some turn a status code of OK. So what does this mean on the client side? On the client side, well, not much of anything. You do the post, and as long as it was OK, great, you're done. That means you successfully added the word. And so really that's all there is. I wanted to have some well-factored code, so I have the separation of duties. And so then I have the phone bill REST client doing all of this stuff with the HTTP request helper to then make calls of the server. So how does that architecture seem to you? Does that make sense? Are there places where you can see it improved? Are there things that are confusing about it? Well, at least you're all on mute, so I can't hear you snoring, so I appreciate that. Okay, so now we've got this client-side code, and it is making calls of the server. And so then, as a result, or rather, so I've got this code, but I want to be able to test this code. Now, this code is interesting because it's got a pretty heavy dependency on the server and having the server running. So begs the question, how do you test this code? Well, it turns out there are two ways to test this code. There is a unit test for this code. So you can write a unit test for this code, and you can do it using Mockito. So I have this constructor here, which takes an HTTP request helper. I've marked it visible for testing, meaning that it's like this constructor is exposed so that I can test the class. You probably really don't want to use it for production code. Your production code is going to use this constructor where you take the host name of the port. But because I factored this so that the HTTP request helper can be provided to an instance of it, I can write myself a unit test. So here's a unit test that that basically mocks out the payload returned by the get method, or actually in this case it's the get method, mocks out the payload of the get method, and then tests what the phone bill REST client does with it. So here I have a dictionary, which is like my object under test. No, I'm sorry. The phone bill REST client is the object under test. This is my test data, I guess. It's saying, hey, listen, I've got a dictionary that has these parameters. That has these word definitions. The definition of the word one is the string one. The definition of word two is the string two. And I want to test, hey, listen, if I have an HTTP response that returns this dictionary, does that get converted into a map by the phone bill REST client like I expect? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mock instance of HTTP request helper that behaves as if, like the REST API would, if the REST API had a dictionary that contained these words and these definitions. Actually, it's pretty easy to do that. I basically say, great, okay, I'm going to configure this REST HTTP request helper to say, listen, when your get method is invoked with an empty map, so no key value pairs on the URL, so basically looking like this as opposed to looking like this. So when it's invoked with nothing after the question mark, then return the text version of this dictionary. And the way I get a text version of the dictionary is I use my text dumper to dump it to a string, and this is what I create my response for, because what the get method returns is a response. So again, it's using this Mockito stuff, which is a little wonky, but once you understand it, I think it'll make more sense to you. Obviously, I think once you understand it, I think you'll be able to use it more easily. And then what do? I create a new phone bill REST client, and I send it my mock HTTP, and I want to assert that when I call get all dictionary entries. And remember what get all dictionary entries does? It calls the get method of my HTTP object, which will be this mock get method right here, and when it calls it with an empty map. And so then here again, when it's an empty map, then return this dictionary as text. That's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to get a response that has this dictionary as text. It's then going to parse it parse that text, and return it. So over here, I'm going to assert that when I get all my dictionary entries, it's going to be equal to this dictionary that I sent back from the server. And what this does is it validates all this logic here without having to use a real REST API. I think there's power in that. I think that allows you to develop code more quickly because you're not starting and stopping your server all the time, and it lets you really think in isolation and not have to worry about all this stuff happening on the client. Sorry, all this stuff happening on the server side with the servlet. So this is how you can unit test your phone bill REST client. However, you also want to write you also want to write an integration test for it. So there is a phone bill REST client IT, and so this is an integration test that requires that the servlet be running. So right now, let's see here, am I running the servlet? I am. So if I run this REST client integration test, I would expect that it would pass. And so it's building everything, and now it's going to run it. Okay. Yep, it ran all 4 tests, and they all passed. So let's take a look at what those tests actually do. So let's see here. The test will create something called we'll call a new phone bill REST client method, which simply creates a new instance of phone bill REST client. I guess I make it so that you can configure the port if something else is running on port 8080. I do this when I test your submissions because who knows what's running on the PSU machine, so I choose a random port. And so I configure the port and always use localhost as the client. And then I call, the first thing I do is call remove all dictionary entries, which will do an HTTP delete. I haven't talked about that yet, but we might see the code later. But then I start making some real calls. So I say, okay, an empty server should contain no dictionary entries. So what do? I get a REST client. I call get all dictionary entries. This should return a map, and I'll assert that the size of the dictionary is equal to 0. Now this is actually calling the real code, right? So I'm going to clear the dictionary entries here, and by calling real code, I mean it's actually invoking the REST API. So I'm going to run that here. And actually, just to prove the point, just to reinforce things a little bit more, I am going to go to my servlet, and I am going to let's see here. I'm going to add a little bit of logging so that it's pretty clear. So I'm going to say system.out.println. I'm going to say writing definition for, and then word and I'll put a definition in here. So that's when I go and fetch something. Similarly, I'm going to, I'll just put a line here. Got a print line. I'm going to say deleting all dictionary entries here in the delete method. And then, because what I want is this to be output here. Now here's something important I want to point out. If I then go back to my integration test, and I run the remove all entries, this will call that do delete. Let me go and do that. But you'll notice that nothing is printed out. And the reason that nothing is printed out is because I need to rebuild the web application now that I've made a change to the server-side code, right? So I changed the, sorry, where's my servlet? Oh, here, I'm looking at my servlet right here. I changed my servlet, but in order for that change to take effect, I need to restart my Jetty. And as part of restarting it, it will recompile the code. Yes. And now when I run the delete again, Yep, I see that it says deleting all dictionary entries. So that's an important thing to note. Something that students often get tripped up on is that if you're running your Jetty server, when you change your server-side code, you need to recompile it. You need to restart your Jetty in order for that change to take effect. Okay. So anyway, so you can have this integration test, and this integration test again is using these fluent API calls like get all dictionary entries and add dictionary entry to ultimately make the calls to the servlet. And I'll just add a couple of those now. So let's see here. So in do post, I'll just put it here, saying and I'll say defining word, word as and let's say delete, and then I'll say down here, I'll say writing all dictionary entries. Out print line, writing all dictionary. Change my server-side code, so I need to start it again. Okay, and so now when I run, well, actually now I can do things like, I'll just go back here, and I'll reload. And now I want to say list all dictionary entries. It comes back empty, but now here in my program output, I'm saying writing all dictionary entries. And now I'm going to do like a doe deer, female deer. And now I get this output here. This, actually, I think what I'll try to remember to do is leave myself a note. So for next time, I have some logging in there out of the box. And this will make things much easier to understand because we'll see things happening on the server more easily, especially when you're invoking from the browser. So now, when I run all of my phone bill REST client tests, when I run them all, you'll see lots of stuff go by. Just to demonstrate that, yes, indeed, yep, we got lots of new stuff here. Yes, indeed, the server is being invoked by this, right? Because we have this long-lived process that you then interact with in a number of ways. You can interact with it through the command line, right? You can interact it through the web browser, and then interact with it through the integration tests. And the server doesn't care because all those clients use HTTP. This is, nice thing about having a shared protocol, especially one as robust as HTTP, is that you can have a whole bunch of different clients that all talk to the same server. So that's the client here. And again, I guess this is kind of an interesting example right down here, this last one. Here, what does it do? This one invokes the, yeah. What it does is it validates that if you try to create a dictionary entry with an empty string as the key and the value, but really the key or the value, then a REST exception is thrown. So you use assert throws, which says, hey, listen, in this code right here, I'm going to, I want to make sure that it throws an exception of type REST exception, and then it'll return, assert throws returns that, so you can capture the exception, and then interrogate it to make sure that the status code of the exception is precondition failed, which is a 412, which is actually, if you go back to the servlet, and you say, let's see here, where's this in the post method? Yeah, right here. The missing required parameter uses a 412 and precondition failed. So make sure that yes, it was the status code that you expected, and that you have the missing required parameter message in there. And so here again, the bottom line is that you've got this Fluent API in your phone bill REST client, but it's just Java code, and so you can write you can write a unit test for it by mocking out the HTTP request helper, or you can write an integration test for it by using by using this constructor that creates a real HTTP request helper, and then just invoking methods on it. And as long as your server is running, it'll be fine. And speaking of that, I have the Maven project for the phone bill web is configured such that when you run the verify phase of Maven, before it invokes the integration tests, it will start up Jetty with your with your application deployed in it. And so therefore, you can, via Maven, you can run your integration tests with Jetty also running. And so it's doing its thing. Question. Good question. What's the advantage of that? Like, why does that matter? Okay, so it matters because Maven controls everything. And you are guaranteed to have basically a clean room test in which the Jetty server is always created from scratch. And so then it's a lot less error prone than relying on like a statically provisioned server which stays out there forever and can get corrupted or dirty or it's got old data or anything like that. So in general, you want to start you want your build process to work with a clean slate. So you want it to download all third-party artifacts. You want to have it compile all the source code, not just the source code that has changed since the last time the build was run. You want to, like what we saw with the GitHub Actions. I mean, that even like provisions a brand new VM to run everything on. Again, you want that clean room environment so that you can limit the variables that might contribute to failures. Because if you see an integration test fail and you're using a statically allocated long-lived server that hosts your REST API, there are just so many more things that could go wrong. Or rather, when something goes wrong, it's harder to find the root cause. Like the root cause, the fact that, someone logged into the system and deleted a bunch of files, right? So by automating the entire end-to-end process, including standing up a new Jetty, you have a much more controlled, much more repeatable environment to run your tests in. That was a great question. Did that answer the question? Any follow-ups? Great. And here again, we run our, let's see here, where is it? There's a the phone bill REST client integration test gets run right there. Oh yeah, and we're seeing our output here, which is meh, but it's okay. So I'm just gonna commit that stuff. Am I? Yeah, I'll commit those changes. So added some logging to the, what did I change the client? Oh, I said that, yeah. To the servlet so that we can see what the page is doing. Saw another question come in, thank you. Or maybe not. Nope, it's not. Okay. So we talked about the phone bill REST client, and now it can have an integration test. There's also an integration test for the Project 4 main class. And this actually is an invoke main test case, right? Because you've got a command line program. So hopefully this is familiar to you. And so what we do is, we have to rely on like the phone bill REST client to remove all the dictionary entries. But now we just have, just invoke main. test cases just like you did in projects 1, 2, and 3. So, oh, I don't know. Here's a good example. No, here, yeah, I like this one. Here is how you use the main method to add data to the to the sorry to the I'm going to start Jetty again to the server. Right, I'm just going to have a word and a definition, and I'm going to invoke main, with the 4 parameters, the host name, the port, the word, and the definition. And this is exactly the same thing that I did over here. So here I'm going to, let's go and find it. Doe, a deer, female deer over here. Oh, yeah, there it is. Defining doe as a female deer. And so if I go and look at it over here, I do not want to confirm form resubmission. Instead, let's just go back and look at all the dictionary entries. There's a female deer. And now if I go and I run this add definition test. Oh, oh, did it get the, oh yeah, it got the JUnit Jupyter problem. I think some of you have run into that before. I need to do a Maven clean to do that. I don't want to do a Maven verify there, just Maven clean. Now I'll run Jetty again. The reason that we get that is that when the code coverage runs, it does some magical things with the bytecode, which kind of confuses IntelliJ. So then this should be okay. Yep. I'm going to put my doe, deer, female deer back in there. Maybe. Oh. Oh, yeah, I didn't. Okay. Maven w package to build the jar file. I deleted the jar. When I did the Maven clean, I deleted the jar file. Running getting run does not build the jar file. But if I run the package phase of Maven, then it'll build the jar file. Good, there it is. Define doe as a female deer. And now I'm going to run this test again. Oh, really? Build. Rebuild project. Try this again. Okay, once more with feeling. That's been better. Cool. And it ran. And so it said, oh yeah, writing definition word as definition. And then, which is exactly what we do here. We invoke our main with the word, and definition. And then we also, I guess we also invoke it with just the word and make sure that nothing is written to standard error. And then what is written to standard out is, oh yeah, is the pretty, well, yeah, is the pretty word and definition. And here when we have everything, we also assert the same. And then we go and look over here, and now we have both the test data, the word and definition, and doe, deer, female deer there in the database, in the server. And so now what I can do is I can run this first test case, which will remove all dictionary entries, clear everything out again. Something else that's important to note is that this test, actually I think both of these integration tests, yes, leverage this @test method order annotation, which basically says, listen, hey JUnit, when you run the tests within this class, sort them by the name of the method. So that's why I have test 0, test 1, et cetera, et cetera. That guarantees that they run in a specific order. Otherwise, the order of methods isn't guaranteed. It's whatever the Java Reflection API returns. I just ran the remove all dictionary entries method, and so now if I reload this page, there's nothing in my dictionary. So Project 4 builds on the first three projects by, again, it's the same domain that you've been working with, the phone bill application. It uses the text dumper and the text writer. It uses the pretty printer, and it has support for testing all of this stuff. It has unit test support, although the unit tests get a little more challenging because you have these mock objects that you need to use when you have very complex objects like the HTTP HTTP servlet request, and also the HTTP request helper. You can create mock objects to provide the behavior that you want, so that your class under test can still exercise that behavior. And then it also has integration tests that will actually make calls to your REST API when it's running inside of Jetty. And this allows you to provide really robust coverage for your application, so you can be confident that it'll work as you want. So what do you think? Are you looking at any questions about how the left-hand side of the architecture works? About how the Java client, how there's Java code that makes calls to the REST API? Cool. Okay. Well, let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 7:12, and we'll spend the rest of the class refactoring this application into something that instead of implementing a dictionary domain, it implements the phone bill and the phone call domain. See you in a few minutes. Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a chance to sort of clear their head and get ready for the second half of class. Let's see here. Before I do the recap, a question came in. A question about Project 3 Plus. Do we have to keep the Project 1 and Project 2 files and integration tests? I want to have to refactor those for the new format for Project 3. No, you don't have to. The Project 1 and 2 main classes can go away. I mean, actually, I think what I recommend that you do is, for a new project, like for Project 3, just rename your Project 2. So use the refactor rename in IntelliJ to rename your Project 2 to Project 3, and go from there. You'll have the history in Git, so if you need to go back and fix a bug in Project 2 or something like that, you can just follow the instructions. Actually, I'll just point that out. Here in the README, let's go up to the top here. If you look for branch, not that one. Yeah. So if you start working on your Project 3 and you need to fix a bug in Project 2, or if you're working on Project 2 and you fix a bug in Project 1, I encourage you to check out this part of the, let's see here, the name of the section is, under submitting. I have this section here that describes how to work with the tags that are created by the submit script, so that what you can do is create a branch from that particular tag, that submit tag, and then you can work on that branch, make the fixes that you want to make for that project, and then commit and push that back up to the PSU machine and submit from that branch. If you choose to do that and you use these instructions, let me know if these instructions made sense to you. They make sense to me, but then again, I'm not you. And this is new content for this term. A student last time asked me to add some stuff, and the tires haven't kicked on it, so I appreciate any feedback that you have with regards to quality of these instructions when it comes to branching. And so as I said, for Project 3, you'll need to go back and revisit your integration tests, and where we have 2 parameters for the date and time, now you'll need to have 3. And so then you probably want to do that first in your Project 3, is just tackle the change in the the number of parameters for dates and times. Okay. So at the beginning of class, we talked about what happens over here on the left side of the architecture on the Java client to the REST API. And we saw how there's a project for class that is the main method that drives everything. And then it leverages a phone bill REST client to the class to provide a fluent Java interface over the calls to the REST API, calls to the HTTP get and post requests that ultimately go to the server. And what it does, what the phone bill REST client does is encapsulates all that behavior, both making the request and then also processing the payload that comes back in the response for that the HTTP response that comes back, and then converting it into an object that looks nice, that's easier for the command line program to deal with. So any additional thoughts or questions that came up during break on what we saw in the first half of class? Question. Is this something that could be adapted to work for anyone visiting the web server? Not sure what you mean by that. Something that could be adapted to work for anyone visiting the web server. You mean, can we add more URLs, multiple people adding info to the dictionary? Yeah, I mean multiple clients? Yes, absolutely. You would have to add some protections to make sure that like the requests are, atomic or idempotent, that you don't have two people like messing with the data structure at the same time. But yes, yeah, that's the whole idea of a web server is that it can support multiple clients. And now it's not really part of this project. We'll only have one client accessing at a time. But certainly when you write real REST APIs, you need to be aware of the amount of concurrency and the scale of requests that come to your APIs. Yep. Great question. Okay. Now, okay, out of the box, we get this dictionary application. We've been talking about it for a class and a half now. And it models everything using this map of strings to strings. But you want to have a phone bill application. And so what I'm going to do for the rest of the class is I'm going to start refactoring some code to then work with phone bills and phone calls instead of strings. So I'm gonna go, since we were talking about the client side, I'm gonna try going from the client all the way back to the server. I'll do the server last and we'll see how that works. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna look at the phone bill REST client. Actually, I'm gonna start at the very beginning. Start at project 4. And I'm gonna start with the yeah. Yeah, I'm going to start with project 4. So the main method, the main class takes it takes 4 arguments: the local host and the port. That'll be the same with the phone bill, but instead of a word and a definition, I want to start modeling phone bill like stuff. So I'm going to model, I guess, the name of the customer and well, it's got to be something like a phone call. So maybe the phone number, the caller phone number. So like what I want to do is I want to say, yeah, this will be like the name of the customer and then the name of and then the caller phone number. Why not? First 2 arguments. So, so let's start. I'm going to look at my project 4 test. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to be refactoring it. It's going to be a pretty big refactor. So things are going to be broken for a lot of the time, and then hopefully I'll be able to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Let's see. So let's see here. I'm just going to start renaming some things. So instead of remove all mappings, it's going to be called remove all phone bills. Because like ultimately the REST API is going to do is going to model phone bills. And so then I'm still going to have a phone bill REST client, but now instead of the Fluent API will not be remove all dictionary entries. Instead, I'm going to rename this method to remove all phone bills. Phone bills. Okay. And let's see here. No command line arguments. Well, okay, it's going to have a missing string. This will probably still be the same. And let's see here. Empty server. Let's see here. An empty server. What is this going to do? If I don't have, if I just have that, well, it's actually going to be missing the name of the, going back to the assignment, the name of the customer is always required, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, so if I don't have a customer name, then it should, yeah, so basically, this ends up being missing customer name, which isn't terribly interesting, because it doesn't invoke the REST API. But, we'll just say that contains string missing customer name. And then standard out should be empty. Empty string. Okay, no definitions, throws, appointment book, REST client step. So this is, let's see here. So this would be unknown phone bill. So if all I'm going to do is send in the name of the phone bill, the customer, for a phone bill for, it's going to ask for the contents of a phone bill that doesn't exist. And so then instead of being word, this will now be customer name. And I'll just call this customer, that. And it expects the REST API exception to be thrown. Great, and that can be a 404. Sweet. Okay. And instead of add definition, this will be add phone bill, phone call, rather. And instead of the word, this will be the customer name. Ooh, that's used a lot. And instead of a definition, this will be the caller phone number. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to invoke that domain, and that should be fine. And then, so here, so the messages class is not something I really talked about. This is just a helper class that formats a bunch of strings, and I do it with methods so that so it's easier for me to test. I just call the test method, and then it formats the string the way I want it. So now, instead of saying defined word as, this is going to be created phone call. And this is like what you would see if you did like dash print or something. Nice. Now I want to go and get the phone bill for that phone call. Nothing should be written to standard error, and it should be, let's see here, format dictionary entry. Okay, yeah, I'll just call this format phone bill instead, or phone call. With the customer name and caller phone number. Well, maybe not. What should this be? Well, I'll figure that out a little bit later. And then this is not valid anymore. That's for printing. That doesn't make any sense here. So these are my tests. I sort of changed this. It's gonna be a while before this actually works, but I just wanted to understand sort of what it looks like from the outside. So basically, um, I'm now, instead of doe deer female deer, it'll be something like Dave's phone. I'm a customer, so customer Dave, and then a phone number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. That's basically what I'm going to be. Oops, that's what I'm going to be entering now. Still running the, actually, yeah, that work is still running. Okay. Well, that's kind of neat. And that changed some things. Now, things are probably going to be super broken because, well, actually, things might not be that broken right now. I'm kind of curious about how much this, if this actually works or not. Because right, all I did was rename some stuff, right? And I took out some tests. Now, I think there's one test that's going to fail because I had that missing. I now require there to be a customer name, so I can go fix that. Not the end of the world. Okay. And now if I run my project for main, okay. Yep, expected missing customer name, but was this because now in my project 4, if word is null, well, I don't print all the definition pairs. Instead, I'm going to issue an error message saying system.error.println missing customer name. And because this isn't server-side code, oh, there's an error someplace. Oh, oopsie. That's what I should do instead. I should say message, and I should just say return. I'm happy? Good. Because this is not server-side code, I don't need to rebuild Jetty. I think everything should be okay. Nice. Okay. So I'm just refactoring, right? I'm sort of changing terminology. I had to change one piece of logic because the command line is a little different, but everything is pretty much the same now. That's cool. Okay. I'm kind of curious, and I want to run Maven clean verify just to see if everything runs from Maven. If so, I'll commit it, and then I'll rely on my continuous integration in GitHub to make sure that everything builds in a clean environment. Again, this is taking baby steps with the refactoring. I want to just change a couple of things, make sure my tests still work, because that validates my understanding of the application. Now, I think I'll be forced to take kind of a bigger step here pretty shortly, but we'll see. Okay, actually worked pretty well. So let's see here. I'm going to commit this code. I'm going to say begin refactoring the application to manage phone bills by changing some terminology in the main class. Push it up to GitHub and see what happens. Okay. So actually, I think my project 4 IT is pretty good. Now let's look at the phone bill REST client. So this is an example of like where my Fluent API isn't what I want. I want this to, instead of working with strings, I want this to work with phone bill and phone call objects. So knowing that, I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy my phone bill and phone call classes from project 123 world, so just the plain old phone bill directory, over into my phone bill web. So let's go find those. So here's my phone bill web. I want to copy them to my integration test, but to my main. So I'll look at phone bill. I'll go find phone bill and phone call. I'm just going to copy those, and I'm going to paste them over here into my main Java. Yep. There they are. Please add those to Git. Don't ask me again. Nice, there they are. Now these are like super bare bones, and I don't know if they're gonna be sufficient or not. Probably not quite yet, but maybe we'll get there. Okay, I'm gonna close those for now because what I want to do next is I want to start morphing my phone bill REST client into something that uses phone bills and phone calls instead of strings, instead of the dictionary. So all this stuff here, and let's look at the test first. So we're creating the phone bill REST client still does the same thing. Here I have another remove. Oh, great! It's phone bills. I've already renamed that method down here, so that's cool. Let's see here. Empty server contains no phone bills, and so here, well. Actually, get all dictionary entries. There really isn't an equivalent to get all dictionary entries. It's more like, yeah, because this would say like get all phone bills, and that's not part of the right. Yeah, it's not part of the REST API. You don't get all the phone bills. You get the phone bills for a given customer. So I don't think this test really makes sense anymore. Neither does the get all dictionary entries method. So I am going to get rid of this test. And now I wonder who else still uses get all dictionary entries. So I'm going to find usages. Oh, there it is. Oh, this is in that mock test. Okay, this will be kind of interesting. Ooh, this will be very interesting. I think I want to attack the unit test first before I attack the integration test. So now here, I want to change this test slightly to say, instead of, let's see here, I want to say get phone bill for customer. Phone bill for customer performed HTTP get with phone with customer name. Okay. So what do I want to do here? So I am mocking out the HTTP the servlet side. So for the phone bill servlet, the parameters that you send to it are customer equals customer name. So here I want to say I want lowercase customer. So this won't be a dictionary so much as it will be. Okay, wait a second. Okay. So I basically want to say, listen, when get is called with a map of customer and I'll also have a variable name, customer name, then return what? So I don't want a dictionary here. Instead, I want a phone bill equals new phone bill, and it takes a customer name. Okay, so I'll do that. And here I'm creating this test data here. So the customer name will be customer name. And yeah, and I'm going to add a phone. And I also want to have a caller phone. I want to say caller number. I say caller equals, and then I want to equal website. So it could be any string. And now I'm going to add, say bill.add phone call, new phone call, and I'm going to send in the caller. Okay. So what am I doing here? Well, okay, you will already have all this done. You will have like a fully implemented phone bill and phone call. Mine's not. So I'm just going to hack one together here, just enough to make the test work. You know how to do this. You've been doing it for weeks. And so then I'm going to have a caller. And I'm just going to skip ahead here. I know I'm going to want to store this in a field. Actually, I think IntelliJ can help me with that. I can say create field for parameter caller. Oh, thank you so much, IntelliJ. And I'm going to have get caller instead of throw non-supported operation exception. I'm just going to say get caller. Oops. Doesn't like. Not a statement. That is true. I need a return. Thank you. Okay, so I got this very simply. And now what I'm going to say is like, great, when I request the phone bill that has the customer with the customer equals this customer name, then I'm going to return not dictionary as text, but I'm going to say phone bill as text. Phone bill as text, and instead of my dictionary, I'm going to have my bill. Is what I called it. Yep. And yeah. And here, phone bill as text will still do the same thing. It will use the text dumper. Oh, except that now instead of taking a dictionary, it'll take. I guess got to change some stuff here. It's got oops. Phone bill, and it's going to dump the phone bill instead. So okay, now I'm changing some things. That's going to break a whole bunch of code. But first, instead of get all dictionary entries, which again I think I want to have go away, I'm going to say get definition, but it's going to be the customer name, and that's going to return a it's going to return a phone bill. So what am I going to do? I am going to then rename this get definition to get phone bill, because that's what it does now. And now, oh good, it grayed out get all dictionary entries because no one else uses it anymore. I wanted to get rid of this anyway, so now I can safe delete it. Thank you, IntelliJ. And now I got to change some other things. So I'm refactoring, right? And I'm breaking things. I'm changing the signatures of things. So now I got to change a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, great. So now my text dumper, and you're just going to use your text dumper. So I mean, you're lucky. You're going to have all this stuff implemented. I got to hack it together here. This is going to take now a phone bill. Oops. And now instead of writing out those things, I'm just going to do something simple here. I'm going to call this customer, and I'm going to call this caller. Oops. Oh, sorry, I'm using a bunch of refactorings here. I'm using refactor introduce variable. I'm going to call this caller. And now I'm going to replace this with, well, the customer. I'm just going to get rid of this. The customer will be bill.customer. And the caller will be, I'm going to make some assumptions here that it's got get phone calls, and then that the phone bill always has at least one phone call. Oops. Dot get caller. Nice. Here, sorry, I'll make this a little bit easier to understand. Call that call. And then I think I have an extra, in here. I'm going to select this code, and I'm going to reformat it. Code, oh, I don't know, where is it? Reformat code. Good, now everything's nicely indented. So, okay, I am hacking together a really hokey text dumper. You already have your text dumper. Your text dumpers are awesome. It does the right thing. Been working since project 2. Mine, I'm just hacking it together kind of around the shell of my my old text dumper or text parser. So basically, instead of writing the word and the definition, I'm just going to write the customer and the caller. Of course, this won't work as I add more stuff. But for tonight, I don't need it to. I'm just morphing the code. I'm just getting it to use the phone bill types as opposed to the strings. Oh boy, lots of problems all around. Oh, there's a text dumper parser test. Well, that's kind of cool. I'd forgotten I had this. Okay, so I have tests for my my text dumper and text parser. So this is nice. I need to change this. I probably should have changed this first. To instead of having maps, Yeah, these are going to be phone bills. Okay, now I got to create some test data. Well, this is going to take a little while. That's fine. Um, phone bill equals new phone bill customer, and that's going to be this. So now dump and parse is going to be a bill, and it's going to return a phone bill, bill 2. Yeah, phone bill 2, and I'll assert that bill 2 is equal to bill 1. And I will have to, oops, right over here, I'll have to change all of this. So then this is now a bill, phone bill. Let's rename this to be bill. And this should all be the same. I will have to fix things though. Dumped text can be parsed. I don't think it really does anything differently than this. Oh, this empty map can be? Okay. This is not so interesting. I don't want this test anymore because an empty map doesn't really represent anything when it comes to the phone bill. But this one's a little bit more interesting here, and I need to have a, what does it look like there? Oh, dump and parse probably needs to, yeah, this no longer returns a map, it returns a phone bill, and so now I'll need to change my parser to return a dumper, make parse, return a phone bill. Yep, now that's not going to compile, but I'll fix that up shortly. I also need to add a phone call, new phone call with a phone number. And now my text parser isn't going to compile because I changed, yeah, it still returns a map. So now let's see here, this is still going to be the same. I'm going to read each line, and for each line, instead of the word in the definition, this is now the customer name, and this is the caller. Instead of map.put, so I'm not making a map anymore, I'm making a phone bill, and I should only be making one of them. So yeah, that's okay. Again, this is not terribly robust code because I'm just hacking stuff together for a demonstration. So now I'm just going to return. Well, okay, we're going to make a new phone bill. Bill equals new phone bill for the customer. And then I'm going to add a phone call with the caller. I'm going to return the phone bill. And then this is going to be dead code, I guess. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, wait. It's possible that it returns null. I don't want to return null, so instead I'll say throw new legal state exception. State exception, no phone bill in text. Doesn't like here. It does not loop. No, that's nice. It is true. It does not. Well, okay. Fix it for me, IntelliJ. Nah, it's not gonna fix it. Okay. Now I'm really curious to see if this test runs. I'm sure it's not gonna. Something probably still needs to be changed. Oh yeah, I probably need to change the other usages of my text parser and everything. Yep, here we go. Okay, this is right. Once you start down the rabbit hole, like lots of things got to change. But that's okay because this code needs to change anyway. This will now be. I'm going to rename all code occurrences to customer, and then this won't be a. This won't be a dictionary anymore. Instead, I'm just going to return. Actually, I'm going to return whatever is parsed by the here, and I'm going to have this method make it return a phone bill. Nice. And there are more problems here. And now let's see here. Oh yeah, this test needs to change to define one word. Oh, this is in the. Yep. So now I'm changing the REST client. So now I need to change the test for the REST client. So this is not going to be define one word. This is going to be This is going to be create. Yeah, so, oh yeah. So this is going to be create, it's going to be add phone call, essentially. That's what this one's going to be. So, right, so this isn't add dictionary entry anymore. This is add phone call. And this is customer and caller. Bear with me. This will all make sense eventually. This is going to be this is now going to be a phone bill, and we'll call this bill. And then we're going to say bill dot get customer name. The customer equals to customer, and we're going to say assert that bill dot get phone call dot iterator dot next dot get caller. Thank you, IntelliJ equal to the caller. Right. So basically, what this does is it goes off and calls the REST API, and but now we have the Fluent client, so it's going to return a phone bill instead. I wonder what that's going to be. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that one's pretty cool. So what other problem do we have? Oh, yeah, here in the main. Okay. So if definition is null, no, then definition is null. We're going to pretty print. Let's pretty print the phone bill. So here we're going to say get phone bill. Yeah. This is going to be the bill, and we're just going to say definition of the pretty printer. So we're going to get a string writer to write the pretty output to, a string writer, and then we're going to say new pretty printer that takes a string writer, and then we're going to say dump, and then we're going to dump the phone bill, and we'll call that a bill. That's probably good. And then message is going to be sw.toString, put it on the main. So I got to change this thing now to be a phone bill. Now I got to get the pretty printer to do its thing. Yeah, okay. Yep. Okay, so then this thing's gotta change. So now instead of this whole thing, we're going to do, it's going to be the customer name, and then this is going to be dictionary. I don't want to call it that anymore. I want to call it bill. And then bill dot get phone calls dot iterator dot next dot get caller. It's going to be caller. Oops, caller. And then it's going to call that. Okay. Doesn't like that anymore. We're going to format this stuff. This, I'm going to go 2 lines. Okay, and then format phone call. Yep, that, let's just fix these up. This is going to be customer, and this is going to be caller. Okay. We don't need this format word count method anymore. Let's get rid of that. Nice. Okay. And is this thing still problematic? Okay. Let's go back to our parser test there. It's probably way off the. Oh, here it is. Text dumper parser test. Let's see if it builds now. Nope. Over here. Oh, right definition. Oh, this. Okay. Now I'm in the servlet. Yep. I'm changing my domain, so oh boy, this is like really impactful stuff. I don't have to change the servlet yet. So maybe what I'll just do is comment this out for now. I don't know, what else is broken? How broken is the servlet? Maybe this is okay? Yeah, maybe this is okay now? I don't know. Do you build now? Okay, that built. So maybe let's see if the test runs. So I'm just working on the client side, on the left side of the architecture, or refactoring things. Oh, and it's saying that there's a method that isn't implemented yet, which is probably true. Yep, add phone call is not implemented yet. So private final, I don't know, list of phone calls. Let's call it calls. Yeah, import list, please. So thank you. Calls equals array list. Again, you will have already done all of this, so you'll just copy your code in there. So I'm sorry to drag you through all of this, but I need to do it here. Start calls, add new phone call. And then this thing is going to return calls. Does that work? Yeah, it seems to work. Okay, so now try running this again. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. Okay, here's something interesting. I don't know if you're going to do this or not, but I use assert that this thing equals something else. And because I use equal to, I need to override the dot equals method for the phone bill. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to how do you override? Code override. Is it? It's not refactor, is it? No, I think it's a. Oh, there we go. Delegate override methods. Right at the very top. Override equals, and I'm just going to say two phone bills are equal if they have the same. They have the same customer. So object is an instance of phone bill, then return this dot customer dot equals phone bill obj. Let's call this other equals other dot customer. Otherwise, they are not equal. I should probably also compare the phone calls too, but wow, that worked. Okay. So this shows me that my text dumper and text parser still work. You know what? Actually, never mind. I want to go add. I want to make sure that the oops, where's my phone bill class? I was just here, damn it. I also want to make sure that not only is this true, but I want to make sure that the calls are the same also. So I want to say the customer name is equals and this dot calls equals other dot calls. And then I also will need, so if I do this, it'll probably fail because I haven't overridden equals on the phone call. Yep. So I need to do that, and then I need to override equals here to then say, do the same thing if, oops, go on. If obj instance of phone call, then return, I need to have the other. So phone call other equals phone call obj, and then I'll return this dot caller equals other dot caller. And if none of that is true, then I'll return false. Things test now. This way I make sure that both the customer name and the caller are written great. It all is. Now, where did I start this whole rabbit hole? I think it was in the, oops, hello. I think it was in the, the REST client IT. No, not the integration test. It was the phone bill REST client test. This one right here. This is where I started everything. Let's see if this thing runs. Oh, I bet it won't, and I think I know why. Yep. Oh, I got null pointer exception. The response is null. Yes, because instead of customer, I should use the name of the parameter. Because the name of the parameter isn't customer right now, it's still word. And so I will look in, is that here? Yeah, word parameter. Okay. Oh, it's here in the servlet. Well, so this shouldn't be word parameter anymore. This should be customer parameter. And yeah, okay. This will be customer. And actually, this shouldn't be definition parameter either. Well, let's just change this to color parameter. And then this will be color. And so now over here in my test, instead of, yeah, instead of customer, this should be phone bill servlet, servlet dot customer parameter. So there's just a lot of stuff that you got to change. I'm trying to change as minimal as few things as possible, and yet I got to change a lot, right? I mean, it's taking me like 20 minutes to write all this code. Oh, and it passed. Well, that's neat. Now I'm curious to see what other things pass and don't pass. So I'm going to run clean verify just to figure out, like, am I good enough that I can sort of check in and then maybe move on to what's happening in the servlet. And again, I think a lot of these refactorings you're going to have to do in your own projects. That's why I'm demonstrating all of this for you. First of all, just to see what you can be done with intelligent refactoring. But I think more importantly, you're going to need to do these same kind of things. I wanted to give you a head start, or at least give you an idea of the kinds of changes that you're going to need to make. Okay, so some things are failing, perhaps not surprisingly. Add phone call. No phone bill in text. Okay, so maybe, oh yeah, phone bill REST client. Yeah, I guess I'm not terribly surprised that's broken at the moment. I need to work on the, yeah, I need to work on the servlet. Okay, I think this is pretty good. So refactored a bunch of client-side code to use phone bill terminology and classes. Now onto the server side. Turns out that ran pretty well. All the unit tests still pass, which is interesting, right? I commented out some stuff in the servlet, and so then in order to get things to compile. But now, yeah, let's go do some surgery on the servlet and see what happens. Oh, question came in. Can you show an example of an error with a phone number format unit test to show how that would happen this new way? Well, I could. Well, so a unit test. Okay, fine. I mean, I didn't implement. Well, okay. So yes, I could. I don't want to take time to do that right now because that's kind of like, yeah, it's probably all the same as it was before. So there are. I think you bring up a good point, Susan. There are certain aspects of your code that aren't going to change, right? As a matter of fact, ideally, your phone call and your phone bill won't have to change from project 3. Your text dumper and your text parser won't change from project 3. Your pretty printer won't have to change from project 3. Depending on how tightly coupled they are to things like the file API, because you're not writing files, instead you're writing to an HTTP, well, you're writing to the print writer that's returned from the response. So I would think that you wouldn't need to add additional testing for doing things like validating phone numbers. Or if you do, you're now validating them as part of the servlet instead of just your command line parser. You need to validate them in both things. Oh, my phone just lit up saying that my code's broken. Good. So yeah, so I don't think you'll need to change anything about your phone call and phone bill. The reason that I have to is that I didn't have like nice working ones before, but I just hacked it all together. So I want to dive back into my phone bill servlet, and I want to do those sort of same things where I'm just changing the terminology. So let's see what we got here. I already changed customer and caller. Instead of dictionary, oh, this is interesting. So here, I'm going to, what am I going to do? I am going to, oh, I think I'll do the right thing. So instead of, my servlet, instead of having a dictionary of words to string, I want to have a bunch of phone bills. And it's going to map the name of a customer to the customer's phone bill. And now, of course, it's going to break all sorts of stuff here. So do get, so let's see here. Do get with the customer parameter, this is going to be the customer name. And if customer doesn't equal null, then I'm going to say, instead of write definition, I'm going to say write phone bill. And then if customer is null, though, I want to have an error. So maybe missing required parameter, sure. And it's going to be customer parameter. Oops, no, the response is going to be response, and the customer parameter. Because customer here is a required parameter. But maybe that's all I need to do for right now. You'll need to do more. Do post, on the other hand, I'm going to get the customer, so let's be the customer. I'm going to, if customer's no longer missing parameter. So the definition, this is going to be the caller. I get the caller parameter. And instead of saying defining customer as caller, I'm going to be adding call to customer for caller. And here, instead of, okay, I'm going to be doing the following. I want to say, I'm going to get the phone bill. It's phone bill. From bills. So get bills dot get from the caller to the customer name. I'm going to say if bill equals null, so we haven't seen this one yet. I'm going to this dot bills dot put customer name and the phone bill. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm going to say bill equals new phone bill for the customer, and I'm going to put it there. And then that's cool. So now I've got the phone bill, and now to the phone bill, I'm going to add a new phone call with that caller, like that. And then, sure, we're created. Okay, so I created it, and so that's good. So what I'm doing here, this is the logic of my program, right? So now I'm storing a bunch of bills that are all mapped to the customer names. I'm going to look it up. If it doesn't exist yet, I'm going to create a new one and put it in there. Easy peasy. And then regardless of where the bill came from, I'm going to add that new phone call for this caller. And that's what put does, right? It goes and gets the customer and the caller. And hopefully you're all daydreaming about how you can extend this to have other things that are on the other properties of a call. Do delete, I'm going to do the same thing that it always does. Instead of deleting all dictionary entries, though, it's going to delete all phone calls. Oh, but you know what? I'm doing this in the wrong order because I wanted to do this test driven, so I should have gone to the phone bill servlet first. But you know what? We're not quite there yet. So let's see here. Oh, this is going to be the customer now. So now write the phone bill for a given customer. So this is not going to be a definition. This is going to be the bill. Bill. Oops. Oh, it's not going to be a string. It's going to be a phone bill. If bill equals null, I'm going to get 404. I like that. And now, oh, here is where I'm actually going to do that for real. So word definition. Nope, this is not this. I don't want word definition. I'm just going to dump the phone bill. Nice. Okay. Same thing here. Oh, write all dictionary entries I don't need anymore. So this is good. I'm just going to delete that because we don't have that functionality. Oh, get definition no is no longer the right thing to do. This is going to be get phone bill for a customer. And by the way, it's super important to update your terminology while you're refactoring. Resist the urge to laze out on this because you're like, why is that called Word? People are going to be really confused. Okay. So this seems to compile now, but I did it out of order. So now I'm going to move this over to the right. And now I'm going to get the phone bill servlet test. I'm sure this thing doesn't compile. Or maybe it does. Okay, it compiles. I don't know if this is going to be the right thing or not. Well, let's give it a try. Let's run the unit tests. Oh, the names are all wrong. Okay. Did a test definition, but test words, phone bill with one phone call. Okay, so then, this needs to be fixed. That's fine. What does this one do? Add one word to dictionary. This is going to be add caller, add call, add phone call. And not word, this is going to be customer and customer, and this is going to be caller. And then again. And let's see here. So why might not this work? Okay, we're going to say the customer is going to be this, the caller is going to be that. We're going to, yep. So what? We're going to say when that information is there, which one fails exactly? Oh, the second one. Oh, okay, great. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna get the phone call out of it, the phone bill. Okay, so this just needs to be fixed. And then there's going to be get calls dot iterator next dot get caller equal to that. So yeah, so remember what? So you probably don't remember what this test does. This uses the mock request to go and pretend to add, or simulate adding a phone call now. And so when I get the phone bill for that customer, which I'm going to assert that bill is not null value. So yes, the bill was created, and it's got one phone call with the caller that matches the caller that came in. So I just need to fix my test here because now my domain changed. And it compiled because, well, equals takes any object. So, okay. And then initial, what does this say? Oh, this one probably is bogus because, yeah, this is like a 404 now or something. Yeah, 412. Yeah. This one isn't as interesting anymore. I guess we could say that there was the status. So let's see here. Nothing is written. Yeah. But it said. So this isn't a 412 CDK anymore. This is a 412. Pre-commission failed. Does that work? So actually, this is nope. What didn't it like? So this should be missing customer name returns precondition failed status. But let's see here. What isn't it like? It said, oh, it called send error. Oh, because it calls send error. Okay. On the response. Yeah, I guess it just works a little differently. And then a string. Okay, so there's no test for. Oh yeah, I changed the naming method. Nope, didn't like it still. Oh, we're gonna do an EQ here. It's a little Makito thing. You can't have just like a constant. You just can't have like a value and then a matcher any string. You need to have an EQ for that thing. Okay, good. So that's happy. So here again, what I've done, I'm just doing refactoring. So I've had to change a bunch of code. You just kind of keep it all in your head as you're making these changes. But my tests are valid, right? So I've got now a test that says, hey, listen, with when I'm missing the customer name, the precondition status failed. And when I add a phone call, I go through and I mock out the request with a customer and a caller, and sure enough, not only do I get the right stuff written back to the response, but then also I also get a phone bill created in my servlet with the caller that I expect in that phone call. So that's kind of neat. So let me try my Maven Clean Verify one more time and see how it goes. I didn't look enough to see how it failed last time to know if this is good or not. It might be, because I wasn't dumping things to standard output, so that probably breaks some tests. Well, that's running. Any questions? I hope this is, I know it's a lot to follow. I hope it's making sense. And so then, my advice is when you get to project 4, before you dive in too deeply, watch what we did here, or hell, just go get my code out of GitHub and take the pieces parts that make sense to you to give you a head start on the project. Ooh, I think it all passed. Wow. Okay, proud of myself. Refactored the servlet to use phone bill terminology and classes. The automated test pass. One more thing that I want to change, and that is, I'm going to run Jetty here. Okay. I'm pretty sure that my index.html is busted. Oops. Yeah. Parameter customer is missing. Yeah. So I gotta fix this index.html here because it's doing things that don't make any sense, like list all dictionary entries. So I'm just going to, so this is optional. Again, you don't need to mess with this, but if you want to, here's how, since I've got like 2 minutes left. Let's go find that index.html, index.html. And here I don't want this thing anymore. It doesn't make any sense to try to call all this stuff. You can't do that anymore with no customer name. And this is going to be get phone calls for customer, and then this is going to be the customer name. So I need to change, I need to change, instead of word, this is going to be customer. And the title is going to be customer, just for consistency. Going to submit, and then this is going to be add phone call, and this is going to be customer, and add phone call for customer, blah, and then so definition, this is going to be caller, and then it's going to be caller. Because, so, these things, like the name of the text input and, it names the text input, correspond to the parameters that are recognized by the servlet. So instead of, this has got to be customer, and so it's got to be customer and caller instead of word and definition. now, see, I just can't reload this, can I? Ooh, I can. Look at that. Okay, so now if I, let's see here. What happens if I just say, okay, what's it going to do? It's probably going to be 404. Oh, it gives me a 404. Great. Excellent, just like we'd expect. So now I'm going to say Dave and 134. It doesn't matter, actually. And now when I say submit, define Dave as, okay, I'll need to fix that, I guess. But kind of like, who cares? Now if I get my phone call for Dave, yeah, good, I get my thing. Okay, so this is working pretty well. So, okay, what I've done here is I've just spent whatever the last hour just like massaging the code and moving things around. But now what I've got is I've got an application that is a phone bill, right? So I've taken that dictionary and I've morphed it, I've carved it, bolded it into a phone bill, and now it's way easier for me to add more stuff, right? So now I can fill everything out and I can add that querying functionality, and I can write tests for all of this because the language that's used is the language of phone calls. It's the APIs are now using phone bill classes and phone call classes instead of strings. It's starting to look more like the real application. So adjusted the index.html file to use phone bill terminology. Nice. Okay then. Well, what'd you think? What were your observations about the last hour? Anything that was surprising? Anything that you learned and want to call out? Anything that you're still wondering about? Nope. Mhm. That's cool. Yeah, I realize that probably very few of you are actually going to start breaking ground on this right away. But when I think about sort of where we are in the course and what's left, um, I wanted to make sure that everybody got exposed to the REST API project because next week we're moving on to Android. Only a couple weeks left in the course, and I want to make sure that first and foremost, everybody can build an Android application. So Android requires not only a new code base, a new project within your repository, but it also requires a new tool called Android Studio. And I've learned the hard way that I want to make sure that everybody is capable of working with these tools. So make sure that your laptop's hefty enough and you got everything configured correctly. So we're going to do that on Monday. So on Monday, we're going to get set up to work with Android, just to make sure that everybody can do it. And then also next week, we're going to start mob programming. And so then I still need to figure out exactly how much time, if I can pull this off on Monday. But I also want to do an operating theater for mob programming. So remember we did the operating theater for pair programming, where a couple of people who are here in class, paired with me. Well, I'd like to do the same thing with mob programming so that you can see other people mob program. Although maybe we'll save that for Wednesday. No, I said that the first mob programming activity is going to be on Wednesday, and so we need to plan to be here. So I know some of you have adjusted your schedules accordingly. So I hope to do an introduction to mob programming, let you all see it first. But I need to then work out exactly how much class time we're going to dedicate to the Android application. Or getting started with Android. So anyway, so more exciting stuff next week because we are heading towards the end of the course. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope you are too. Well, we're probably all looking forward to being done for tonight, and that's what we are. So thank you all for bearing with me tonight as I wrote a bunch of code really quickly and talked and said a lot of things. And that is all that I got. Have a great evening, everybody. I will see you on Monday.